There we go. So nice, easy, gentle class this morning, hopefully. I'm going to start seated. Got my block ready, got my blanket ready as well. It's still a bit chilly. And take a seated position and just let the pelvis kind of find its own natural place. Wriggle around a little bit. Let the shoulders relax down, get a nice long neck. And just start to let these big hip flexor muscles and outer hip muscles, groins open out a little bit. Remember to soften the jaw. You can close your eyes if you wish. We'll take a simple twist to the left. So just bringing the hands around. Breathing in and out in position. Just squeezing out the sponginess of the sponge. Getting all the old debris out. And then we can release. We'll take it to the second side, see how that feels. And then we'll come back. We'll take that into some side bends. So I'm just going to wander my hand out to the left, palm down. And to try and keep the head in line with the spine rather than dropping it down. So be a little bit conscious of that. Take the right hand out and up, and then follow the line of the body. Now, if it feels good to bend the bottom elbow, you can. But if you lift your right buttock off the floor in the attempt, then you just need to press yourself back. This is more about getting some length down the body, so we don't have to worry too much about arching the spine over. We're putting the lateral bend into the side of the body quite naturally. And we'll release and take it out to the second side. So just wandering the right hand out this time. Taking the hand up to the sky and then extending out to follow the line of the body. So it's easier to keep the chest pointing forwards. Quite often when you bend that bottom elbow, what happens is you kind of roll the chest in towards the front a little bit and the bottom shoulder kind of pops forwards. So a slightly higher version allows you to sort of keep a little bit more integrity in the shoulders. And then we can bring those hands down again. We'll come into some angel wings. So we'll just bring the fingertips onto the collarbones and elbows together, touching in front of the chest. Inhale high. Roll the elbows back. Squeeze the shoulder blades together as much as you can. And then as the elbows come back into the ribs, you bring them across the chest. and lift up. So you're going to get a little bit of flexion and extension through the spine as we do this as well. So the hips might feel like they're rolling around a little bit. Now I'm just going to hope that your shoulders don't sound as creaky as mine going around. We've got some rusty bits in there. And then we'll just take it a few times in the opposite direction. And then release down. Now we're going to come down gently to the floor. I'm going to use that block and put that behind my head. And let the knees come in towards the body. Take the hands gently on top of the kneecaps and then use them to help guide the knees into some nice big juicy circles. So we're just getting a little bit more juice into the hips. And then taking the legs in the opposite direction as well, a few rotations. And we'll bring the feet to the floor. The arms out nice and wide, crucifix style. And just move the hips a little over to the left as you bring the thighs down over towards the right side. Try and keep the shoulders on the ground. Imagine you can lengthen your hips away towards the front end of the mat, just like you've got an invisible weight pulling you down. But apart from that, we try and keep everything relaxed. So if you do get that connection and you start to feel the hips moving away, we can kind of engage the legs a little bit more than necessary. So you're trying to turn them off and be very specific about just one part of the body moving. Now we'll lift the knees back up to the center, reset the spine, just take it this time over to the hips over to the right a little, ease the legs over to the left. So you might get a little bit of creaking and cracking and popping in the spine, guided by the medical community as being okay. And then we'll bring the knees back up into the center. And we're going to draw the right knee in towards the chest. I'm going to take the hands around the shin, but back of the thigh would work as well. We're going to draw the knee towards the armpit. Slowly lengthen out the left leg down the center line. And then point the toes away. Spread the toes out a little bit as well. And lift the foot just an inch off the floor. As you do that, draw the belly into the spine and try and get your lower back into the ground. Try and send the sitting bones away, which can be a little bit of a complex idea as you're trying to draw your knee in towards your chest and send the sitting bone away at the same time. We'll just let the foot come to the floor and drill that left heel in. We'll swap over the legs that are coming in towards the body. So the left knee comes in. Give that a little time to draw and settle in towards the armpit. It usually takes a couple of breaths. And then you can slide the right heel out, again down the center line, point the toes away, spread the toes a little. Get that nice long leg so you feel the muscles around the kneecaps engage a little bit, drawing the belly in. Lift the foot again just an inch off the floor. And then try to connect the mind and the hips up so we can move them in the direction we want, which is towards the front of the mat. And then we'll release. Bring the knees back in. Go take a little breath and draw the knees in towards the chest. And then point the toes away and extend the legs up towards the sky. So you're trying to get the legs as straight as you can and directly over the hips. So you're going to draw your lower back into the floor a little bit so you keep your abdominal muscles engaged. And then take the hands out to the side. We're going to come into cactus arms. So a little bend in the elbows and then try and get the forearms and the wrists onto the floor. Now you're trying to flatten the spine out a little bit. Squeeze the thighs together a touch. Perhaps I should have mentioned we're going to be here for about 1.5 minutes. Good news is, we've got less than half a minute to go. And we'll let the legs gently come back down in towards the bottom, feet to the floor. And kind of cross the left leg over the right and bring the heel in close. If you're able to wrap your foot around the back of the calf, great. But if not, you can be a little bit more like me. And we'll take that a gentle twist over to the right side with the legs, head facing the opposite way. Stick up those arms in the cactus pose position and try to keep shoulders and forearms and wrists connected to the ground. We'll lift back into the center on an exhale, just drawing the tummy muscles in. Extend the leg out so you can unwrap. And we'll take the right leg up, cross that over. Again, wrapping around if you can. The intention really is to keep the thighs nice and closely together. And then when you're ready, you go over to the left. Now bring the knees back up. Untangle the legs. Draw the knees in towards the body. We'll take a little hug. Just wrapping the arms gently around. And then we'll roll onto our right side. Use the hands to lift up. Now we're going to come into Dandasana. I'm just going to move the block out to the side because we're not going to stay here for terribly long. So the feet flat to, or legs flat to the ground is easier. Hands just a little bit behind the hip bones. We try and get a nice 90 degrees. This time the toes flex towards us. You're looking to have the big toe and little toe joint the same distance away from the body. So you might have to roll the thighs in a little bit if you tend to have legs that roll out a little bit. So these thighs are trying to lengthen towards the front of the mat, although we're flexing and it will feel like everything's tightening back up. We're still trying to lengthen them out a little bit. Last few breaths here. And then we're going to take the hands away, but we're going to just let the feet come out nice and wide. And we're going to come into that churning the middle pose. So the hands come out in front, so the body sits up nice and tall. We just start to make some little circles. So a little forwards, a little out to the side, and a little back. And gradually let that get bigger. Now the hamstrings might be going, yeah, I'm not so sure this is a good idea. Or even the lower back muscles or the side body. Maybe it's the shoulders that start to talk to you most quickly. And try and keep the feet pointing up towards the sky and lengthening out through the heels, toes towards the ceiling. And just letting the body warm itself in. Those circles will generally get bigger naturally by themselves. And then we'll start to take that in the opposite direction. This is definitely one of those poses that I can notice an enormous amount of difference between doing this in the morning and doing this in the evening, when my body's had the whole day to kind of wake itself up and loosen up a little bit. So try to appreciate the time of day that you're practicing. It might be affecting how your body moves or where it gets to. We'll finish off with that. I'll just bring the hands back underneath the thighs. I'm going to cross the ankles over and just roll onto the shins, coming up onto all fours. I'm going to maraud a little bit like a bear, so just swinging the hips out from side to side, giving the wrists a little bit of a chance to explore taking some weight and stretching out the tendons in the hands as well. You can let yourself sink around into the shoulders a little bit as well, so you get a little bit up and down movement. You can even be bending the elbows if you wish a lot. That feels good. Who's to say what your bear impression should look like? Now we're going to take a plank, so we're just going to take one leg out at a time. And it's a yogi plank, so the hips stay about the same height as the shoulders. We press the shoulders away from the floor, so we try not to sink in. We just get a little bit of protraction in the shoulder blades, i.e. they move out farther apart. Press out through the heels, remember to breathe. And then we'll let the knees come back down to the floor. Tucking the toes underneath, I'm going to sit back onto the heels. So coming into modified hero's pose, so getting the stretch into the feet. Whilst we'll do that, we'll take the arms out wide. Bring that left arm across and wrap the right arm underneath into a surface stretch. So drawing the left shoulder around a little bit more. And we release. Just float the arms out. Cross them over the other way. As you do, you can, if you wish, lift up off those toes. They might have had enough. And then take the bootlaces down version of the same thing. And release from there. We'll come down onto the elbows and we'll have them set about shoulder distance apart for Sphinx pose. So just walk the feet back gently, untuck the toes, draw the chest forwards, roll the shoulders out nice and wide, forearms down to the floor. Try and have the toes point in a little bit and the heels out so you make some more space around the back. Try and soften the buttocks a little bit. I know it's not easy to do. They do tend to sort of switch on, almost like a remote control's being pressed. Now we're going to move from here, bring the chest down to the floor, and let the hands come down by the side of the body, palms face down. So we're going to take some variations on locust pose. We'll inhale the chest and the hands away from the floor. Keep the thighs touched. And exhale back down. So we're just trying to lift up to the bottom rib. Inhale. Exhale down. Inhale it up. And back down. 2 more times. Last one. This time we'll just take the legs away from the floor. So lift the thighs, try and keep the legs straight. Inhale up. Exhale down. Chin stays on the ground. Inhale up. Exhale it down. Inhale up. Exhale it down. 2 more. Last one. And then it's chest, hands, and thighs. Inhale up. And back down. There's 4 more. And last one. Bring the hands back underneath the shoulders. Press away from the floor. We'll lift up gently onto all fours. And we're going to take cat-cow, but I'm going to keep the toes tucked under this time. So just drawing the chest forwards once you've done that. Exhale around the spine. Lift up. Inhale forward. So seeing if you can get this movement to come from the pelvis, just tilting backwards and forwards, letting the spine kind of follow. And stretch out the back of the shoulders. Try and keep the hands glued to the ground. Come forwards one more time. Exhale it out. Come back onto all fours. We're taking the knees as wide as the mat and just sitting back down onto the heels. And walking the hands forward slowly, getting down very low to the ground. Trying to keep the elbows off the ground so the hands are just stretching that little bit further out. The shoulders will start to wrap around the ears a little bit. And then we'll the hands over to the right side, keeping them about shoulder distance apart. left, and we'll just ease the hands over to the left side. So walking, taking the option to walk the right hand out that little bit further, get a bit of a deeper stretch down the sides of the body. Breath still wants to be generous and soft and easy. And then we'll come back into the center. As you do, we just walk the hands in a little bit, and we'll bring the knees back so that they're more sort of hip distance apart. And we'll come into swan flow. So we'll draw the hands up towards the sky, interlace the fingers, index finger points up, and then we'll reach the hands towards the sky so we get a lot of length down the side of the body. Keeping the heels and the buttocks connected, we hinge forward slowly, keeping the belly drawn in, and letting the hands come to the floor. Now, as you arrive, you're going to roll the spine back up into that seated posture, just dragging the hands along the floor. Inhale high. Exhaling down and over. Rolling through. We've got 3 more. So this will be the last time coming down to the floor. And this time we'll lift ourselves up onto all fours. Now we're going to just allow ourselves to tuck the toes of the right foot in and lengthen the leg away. Press the shin down into the floor a little bit more. Lift that right foot off the ground to about the height of your hip. Allow yourself to bend the knee. And draw the knee in towards the chest. Give a little squeeze around the spine. Take the foot back. So the knee's about the height of the hip, keeping the belly drawn in. Rolling through. Floating out. So imagine that you've got a tennis ball between the calf and the back of your hamstring. You're just trying to hold that in place. A little squeeze, you flex the foot. Knees coming towards the nose. And then bring the knee back down to the floor. We'll do the same with the left. Tuck the toes underneath, lengthen the leg out. Make sure you're stable. Try not to lean into the elbow joints or shoulder joints too much. Lifting the foot away from the floor, we bend the knee. Imagine your tennis ball's in place. And then draw the knee through. Take it back out. Keep the foot flexed. Draw it in. Trying to keep the hips stable. So think about pubic bone staying in the same position over the center line of the mat. If you are noticing the hips are rolling around a little bit. We'll take one more scoop in towards the body. And then bring the knee back down to the ground. Now we're going to take a little breath and take our right foot to the outside of the right hand. Going to tuck the toes on the back foot underneath. And just slide the foot a little bit further away so you get a nice straight leg. And you're going to press the front thigh or shin into that front arm. And try and keep the back leg nice and straight. I'll step it back into a plank. Bring your knees to the floor. Take the left foot out. Toes point forwards. Toe on the back foot. Slide the foot out. Try and keep the hips over the center line of the mat. Remember, you're just pressing very lightly that leg into the arm. It does take a bit of focus. Strangely enough, it seems to take a bit more focus on one side than the other. Can't quite fathom that out, but there we go. I'm going to take a little breath from there. Step it back into the plank. Lower the knees to the floor. Now, as I lower the knees to the floor, I'm going to bring them together so they touch on the center line and draw the right knee forward as far as I can. Slide the left foot back, so I start to sit onto the heel. And I'm going to bring my right hand in and just turn the knee out to the side, keeping the heel underneath the groin. Now I'm going to come down onto the elbows. Have them about shoulder distance apart. Forearms into the ground and lengthen the back leg away. So I'm going to walk the back foot out. There's quite a lot of room to stretch. You can almost get to the point where the knee lifts off the ground if you lengthen far enough back. Keeping the belly drawn in a little. The head stays in line with the body. We're trying to keep the shoulders away from the ears, so think about stretching them out to the sides a little bit. And then we just walk the hands back in. Draw the chest up. If you're trying to get to the point where you can lift the hands off the ground. And then we'll release. And just let ourselves come back onto all fours again. Knees are together. So same thing, this time the left knee comes forwards. Walk the back foot out. Bring the left hand in and take the knee out as far as to the side as you comfortably can. And then when you're ready, we come down onto the elbows again. Trying to keep those hips stable across the width of the mat. By that I mean, both hip bones would be the same distance from the floor. Quite often when you come into pigeon, you sort of see people sink down to the side a little bit or roll out onto the opposite side. So you're just trying to keep yourself in the center, focusing on getting that leg nice and long, broadening out through the shoulders. Pressing to the forearms just a little bit, it helps. And then we'll take a breath from here. We're going to walk the hands back in again. Come up high. And then we try and lift the chest up out of the pelvis. So still trying to lengthen that back leg away. Still thinking about trying to keep the hips square. Just change a little bit through the hips when you lift up onto the from the forearms to the hands. Try and roll the shoulders back a little bit if they're popping forwards. And then we'll release from there as well. So we're just going to ease ourselves onto all fours. Tuck the toes underneath. Walk the hands in towards the body so that we can lift the knees gently away from the ground. And then we're going to move into a forward fold. So head goes down and the bum comes up. We'll take a few breaths here. Just gently moving the hands in a little closer to the body. Getting the ribs a little closer onto the thighs. Taking time to get the weight even in the toes, in the feet, heels. We'll soften the knees, so we're sitting back into a chair and taking the hands out in front. We're just driving through the thighs to lift back up. We're letting the hands come down and we're going to walk out to the front of the mat for a little wristy sequence. So we want the feet to be about hip distance apart and the feet parallel. And we're going to be sort of moving through chair, so into that squatting position. You want to try and keep your knees pointing in the same direction as your toes, and ideally your toes pointing forwards, not out to the sides. When we move around, you kind of move the weight through your feet, so they do sort of flex in and out a little bit, so you might have to adjust them as we go through. Wristy sequence, we take the hands towards the sky, bring the hands in towards the heart. We'll soften the knees over the toes, take the hands directly out in front of the chest, palm faces in. Now I'm going to take a little breath here and drop my right hand down towards my hips. Turn the hand towards the back of the mat, palm faces out. I'm going to try and keep the hips and the knees pointing forwards. Inhale the arm overhead until the hands line up, and then I sink down into the chair. I'm going to come right down and deliberately let the ribs sit on the thighs, let the head hang, brush the hands against the floor, take them towards the back of the mat and then up towards the sky. I'm going to float them forwards again. And as I do, I'll lift the head a little bit, sit down deep, lengthen out the arms in line with the body and then drive through the legs to come back up. Bring the hands in towards the heart. Soften the knees, take the hands out in front of the chest. Left arm comes back. Inhale it up and over. Exhale it down. Draw those hands behind and up to the sky. Float forwards. Sit deep. Drive through the legs. Hands into the heart. We'll speed it up a little bit. Knees bend, hands out. Right arm down and back. Inhale it up and over. Exhale it down. Bring the hands forwards as you breathe in, lengthen. Drive out through the thighs. Hands into the heart. Soften knees. Hands to the front, left hand back. Twist the body out to the side to let the eyes follow. Inhale it up. Squat down. The arms back. Inhale forwards, drive through the legs. Hands into the heart. Soften the knees. Hands out in front of the chest. Right arm out to the side. Inhale it over. Exhale it down. Through. Drive through the legs. Hands into the heart. Soften the knees as the hands go out. Left hand back. Inhale up and over. Exhale down. Floating forwards. And allowing ourselves to drive back up. We'll bring the hands into the heart. This time we're just going to hinge straight over the hips into the forward fold. Bring the hands onto the floor. We'll step the right foot back into lunge and drop the heel in. Ready for warrior two. We'll bring the hands onto the side to lift up and then open out the hands nice and wide. Now we're going to take the hands behind the back. Interlace the fingers a little bit. Squeeze the shoulder blades together. Draw the hands down and try and bring the ribs down a little bit as well. They kind of lift up towards the sky if you're not careful. You take a little breath from here. Hinge the body out over that front thigh so you follow the line of the back leg and you try to take your hands towards that back foot, keeping the chest alongside of the mat. Now we'll come back into our warrior two, so release the arms. Float the hands to the sky on the breath in. Rotate the shoulders, spin on the back heel. To come to the front of the mat, we're going to let the hands come down towards the ground. We're going to lean over the front thigh, press out through the back heel, then swing the hands forwards as we push off the toes and hopefully step with the feet parallel, hip distance apart at the front of the mat. Inhale high, hands through the heart. Forward slow fold. Left foot back. Drop in the heel in. But warrior two. Bring the hands onto the side to lift and open it out. So just little micro adjustments. Maybe relaxing the shoulders out a little bit, getting stretched through the fingertips. Getting the chest turned, getting the feet active into the floor, and then bring the hands behind. Draw down towards the floor. Squeeze the shoulder blades together a little bit. Slowly extend out, imaginary line in your body painted between the back foot, hip, and shoulders. Draw the hands towards the back foot, turn the chest to the long side. Just turn in a little bit when we come into this pose. So when you turn your chest more to the side of the mat, not towards the sky, you might feel that through the groin a little bit more. And we'll release back up into our warrior two. Take the hands high. Rotate slowly. So onto that ball of the foot. When you're ready, the hands come down. You lean forwards. Take a breath in. Exhale to float it forwards. Allow yourself to bring the hands in towards the heart. Now hinge down to the floor. Take a little breath. Let's step back into a plank-esque position. So let the knees come to the floor. It wasn't really a full plank. I'm going to start to move my blanket into position. I'm way ahead of myself. Taking the feet out in front. And this time I will be taking the block underneath the bottom. And just lengthening the legs out. I'm going to have the feet about hip distance apart. Flex the toes a little bit, spread the toes out, bring the hands in line with the body, and just lift myself up. I wanted to just roll out on that flesh of the sitting bones a little bit so they untangle themselves, if you know what I mean. And then we'll deliberately put a little bend into the knees and bring the hands onto the shins. Going to lift the hip bones up over the thighs and extend forwards. And just slide the fingers down to wherever it's easy to reach. Now remember, the body is still a little bit cold this time in the morning. We haven't done a lot of super active work in the body, and we haven't done that many forward folds. So seated forward folds are always going to be trickier than a standing because the sitting bones are locked in position. Drawing the chest up, belly in a little bit. And start to think about extending the heels out, maybe one leg at a time, to just take the bend out of the back of the knees. And then thinking about sending the sitting bones towards the back of the mat as well, lengthening them out. And then we'll release. Now bring the feet back together so they touch on the center line. And I'm going to draw the right heel into the groin and let the knee down to the floor. If it doesn't, you can take a cushion or a blanket or a block underneath the thigh. I'm going to roll the extended leg so that there's a little bit of internal rotation in the thigh and the knee and shin are all pointing towards the sky. Again, put the little bend in the knee, bring the hands onto the shins. Going to lift up out of the pelvis, over the thighs and extend out. Now I'm going to take the hand on top of my foot. You could hold on to the ankle. I'm just going to draw the hands back very lightly. So I'm starting to draw my shoulders towards the back of the mat. So getting a little bit of space for the shoulders to open out rather than round the ears. And then we'll release from that. And we'll take it out to the second side. So feet together, heel into the groin. The bottom foot that bends in towards the groin is actually flexed. Allow yourself to have a little bit of support on that bent knee. A little bend to the front knee. We'll square the hips up nicely. Hands onto the shins. We'll lift up over the pelvis. Fold it forwards. Slide it out. And then draw the hands back wherever you're able to connect with your body. And again, thinking about lengthening out through the heel, if that feels like it's going to be an okay, sensible thing to do. If it feels like it's a really bad idea, don't do it. Follow what your body's telling you. And then we'll release from there as well. We'll take this into a seated twist. So legs go out in front. I'm going to draw the right foot underneath and out to the left. So my right knee's pointing forwards. I'll wrap the left leg over and bring the foot deliberately close into the body so that I've got more chance to have the knee high and the foot flat to the floor. I'm going to just tilt the pelvis forwards a little bit so that I get that roundiness out of the back to lift up. I'll take the right hand to the sky and twist into the left side and bring the arm down. So just cantilevering a little. Keeping the belly drawn in. And then I can release from that side and do it again to the second side. So taking probably as much time to set yourself up in the pose as to actually be in the pose fully. Coming round to the right side this time. And then release that side as well. We'll come down to the floor. And I'm going to move the block out to the side just for a moment. I'm going to take a little bridge pose. So I'm going to use the hands to come down. Feet about hip distance apart. Hands come forwards and down by the side of the body. I'll lay the head to the ground so that I get that nice long neck and just lengthen out through the spine. Draw the belly down towards the floor to get that lower back to connect. Tilt the tailbone a little further away from the ground so the lower back comes even more into the ground. Keep that transition of drawing the belly in as you lift the hips towards the sky. On the exhale, we're going to bring the hands a little closer underneath the body and see if we can interlace the fingers. Roll the shoulders under a little more. And then press the arms, or the back of the arms, forearms and wrists into the ground. You keep the little finger tucked in. Now some people can do this and actually have the heels of their hands touching underneath their body with their hands interlaced. I'm just a little bit short on range of motion, I think, in the shoulders in that direction. So the heels of my hands are always apart, as much as they possibly could be. Just barely got my fingers interlaced, to be honest. Try and keep the knees about the same distance apart as the heels, and a sense of lengthening the thighs away, just like there's a pair of hands magically drawing your thighs away from you. Letting your buttocks move in the same direction. It could be another pair of hands. And we'll slowly peel down towards the floor, just releasing the hands out. Down to the ground. Take the arms out wide. Palms face up. Take a little breath. Now this time we're going to draw the knees in towards the chest. And then let the legs roll over to the right. And as I do, I'm going to use the right hand to just ease those legs a little closer to the floor. So try and keep the shoulders on the ground. I'm even going to look in the direction I'm twisting. And then we'll release. So bring the knees gently back up. And we'll let ourselves roll out to the second side. So keeping the knees drawn in nicely to the body. I'll slowly bring the knees back up. Now I'm going to move into happy baby pose. So the knees can now go wide. I'll take the hands down the shins. I'm going to move my block back underneath the back of my head. It's more of an option, but I just find that I crane a little bit if I'm not careful. I'll take the hands around the outside edges of the feet, so holding on to that little toe side. Allow the heels to rise up towards the sky as I lower back down to the floor with my head, making a nice long neck, rocking a little bit from side to side. Not intentional, just that as I'm talking and breathing, the diaphragm's moving and it tends to get that little bit of a wobble in, but it does feel nice on the spine. So if you intentionally want to, be my guest, and try and lengthen the tailbone down to the floor. And then we'll release the feet to the floor. So I'm going to put my blanket over me, just for a little bit of extra warmth. Any extra layers you have. And then hopefully we can all just lengthen the legs out nice and easily to the corner edges of the mat. Let the hands come out to the side of the body, palms facing up. Closing the eyes. Just going to be here for a few minutes so we won't get too cold. Begin to stretch those fingers and toes. Let the wrists and ankles move a little. Breathe a little deeper. Allow ourselves to stretch out. And then draw the knees back in. Roll onto the right side. Stay there for a breath or two. And then use the hands to press into the floor to lift up. Come into a happy position that you can sit in easily. Let's let the spine lengthen itself out a little. The hands come in towards your heart. You take a breath in. And as you exhale, let the chin drop. Gently bowing to the floor, sealing our practice for the morning. And as the breath comes back into the body, let it build the spine, lift the head, open the eyes. Namaste. Thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful weekend. See you soon. Or maybe tomorrow. Who knows?
Thank you, David.
It's right. It's my pleasure.
It was just, honestly, my Labrador decided to come and join me when I was trying to relax at the end.
I did see something.
Yes, just decided that she wanted to come and have some love.
Yeah, I saw a pair of legs wandering across in front of me.